A faint melody of panpipes drifts from the deep woods. This is the call of the faun, one of Roman mythology's most charming and deeply misunderstood spirits. We often picture a simple creature with goat legs, but the true faun is a complex being of untamed nature, hidden prophecy, and chaotic, joyful fun. By the end of this journey, you will see this mythical figure not as a mere storybook monster, but as a profound key to understanding our own wild souls. We are going to unmask the real spirit behind the horns and hooves, separating centuries of fiction from esoteric truth. What secrets lie behind that mischievous laugh? And why was a god of the forest so feared he was later cast as a demon? What part of your own nature have you been taught to tame that actually yearns for that wild, ancient freedom? That mischievous laugh echoing through the trees has ancient roots, stretching back to the wild hills of Greece. But to truly understand the faun, we must first meet its ancestor, the satyr. In Greek mythology, satyrs were creatures of pure, untamed instinct. They were the riotous companions of Dionysus, the god of wine and ecstasy. Their world was one of drunken revelry and unchecked desire, a chaotic celebration of the senses that often crossed into madness. The Greek satyr was a force of nature, yes, but a nature that was primarily sensual and frenzied. When the Romans encountered this concept, they did something fascinating. They didn't just copy it, they transformed it. They took this wild Greek idea and grafted it onto their own deeply rooted tradition of a forest god named Faunus. This is where the evolution begins. The name Faunus itself comes from the Latin word favor, which means to favor or to be kind. This wasn't a name born from fear, but from a hope for benevolence from the wild. Faunus was an ancient Italic deity, a god of the deep woods, of shepherds, and most intriguingly of prophecy. He was a voice on the wind, a whisper in the leaves that could reveal the future to those who knew how to listen. This crucial difference reshaped the entire being. The Roman fauni, the plural spirits that sprang from Faunus, inherited this deeper connection. They were still playful and chaotic, but their domain expanded. They became guardians of the forest itself, not just party-goers in it. Their mischief was layered with a sacred purpose. They tested travelers not merely for sport, but perhaps to see if they were worthy of receiving the forest's hidden wisdom. So while the Greek satyr was lost in a Dionysian frenzy, the Roman faun was listening to the secret language of the rustling leaves. This shift from pure hedonism to a nature spirit with prophetic insight is the essential first step in unmasking the true, complex character of the faun. It's the difference between a drunkard and a shaman. Both may act outside the norms of society, but one is merely indulging, while the other is seeking a deeper truth hidden from civilized view. This divine lineage begins with Faunus himself, a god far older and more powerful than the playful spirits that bear his name. He was the voice of the wilderness, a master of forest so deep and ancient they felt outside of time itself. His protection extended to the fields and the flocks, making him a vital deity for farmers and shepherds whose lives depended on the land's unpredictable generosity. But his most profound power lay in prophecy. Faunus did not speak in grand temples. His oracles were delivered through the raw, unfiltered sounds of the wild. A sudden rustle in a sacred grove, the cry of a bird, the way the wind sighed through the oaks. These were his words. Most famously, he would reveal the future through dreams, coming to those who slept on the fleece of a sacrificed animal within his sacred precincts. This was not a gentle guidance, but a cryptic message from a world untouched by human reason, a truth that had to be interpreted through intuition, not logic. The essence of this powerful, untamable god was celebrated in one of Rome's most chaotic and ancient festivals, the Lupercalia. Held each February, this rite was a spectacular release of primal energy. Young men, known as the Luperci, would strip naked, sacrifice goats, and run through the city's streets, striking anyone they met with thongs cut from the hides of the sacrificed animals. This act was believed to purify the land and promote fertility, ensuring health and abundance for the community. It was a sanctioned outburst of the wild into the very heart of civilization, a direct channeling of Faunus's raw, untamed power for a fundamentally beneficial purpose. This is the crucial connection. The festival shows us that the wildness of Faunus and, by extension, his faun children, was never meant to be purely destructive. Their chaotic energy, their mischievous tests, were a form of natural purification. Just as the Lupercalia wild run cleansed the city, a faun's trick in the forest could be seen as a test that cleansed a traveler of arrogance or foolishness, forcing them to confront the raw, real world beyond their comfortable illusions. So when you picture a faun with its panpipes and playful smile, remember it carries the bloodline of this formidable forest god. Its mischief is not mere anarchy, but the inheritor of a sacred, chaotic rite meant to keep the world fertile, alive, and honest. That iconic form, the human torso rising from the powerful legs of a goat, is far more than a mythical artist's whim. Every part of the faun's body is a deliberate symbol of its wild essence. Let's start from the ground up. Those cloven hooves are not just for traversing rough terrain. They are a permanent, physical anchor to the earth itself. While gods like Jupiter ruled from the sky and Neptune from the sea, the faun's domain was the soil, the rock, and the living forest floor. Its hooves keep it grounded in the raw, untamed reality of nature, a being that can never be fully civilized. Then there are the horns. In the ancient world, horns were a universal symbol of potent virility and untamable power, seen in the mighty bull or the challenging stag. They are a crown of raw animal nature, a constant reminder that this is a spirit driven by primal urges and creative life force. And that tail, often flicking with mischief, is the final, undeniable stamp of the beast, a symbol of the pure, unthinking instinct that the faun embodies. This entire physical form is a map of its purpose, a creature forever balanced between human reason and animal wildness. But this fearsome, potent image was softened over centuries. In classical Roman art, fauns were often depicted as vigorous, sometimes even intimidating figures, their wildness palpable. The Renaissance, however, reimagined them. Artists, looking back with a romantic lens, transformed these chaotic spirits into charming, pastoral characters. They became youthful, playful, and almost gentle, their horns smaller, their expressions more mischievous than threatening. This was the faun sanitized for a new age, stripped of its deeper, more dangerous symbolism, and repackaged as a delightful denizen of a tame, poetic woodland. The true faun, however, was never this safe. Its form was a warning and an invitation, a declaration that the wild world is not a gentle park, but a living, breathing, and powerfully instinctual force. The deep woods of ancient Italy were not just a collection of trees. They were a living, breathing entity, and this was the faun's true cathedral. These forests were the ultimate liminal space, a tangible threshold between the world of human order and the untamable wild. A liminal space is a borderland, a place of transition like a shoreline or a twilight hour, where the normal rules soften and anything can happen. The faun was the lord of this in-between, the guardian of the threshold itself. You did not simply walk into its domain, you crossed over. The moment you stepped from a sunlit path into the deep shade of the ancient oaks, you entered its realm, and the familiar world fell silent behind you. The air itself changed, becoming cooler, heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Every rustle in the undergrowth was a sign of its presence. A snapping twig just out of sight, the strange, melodic sigh of the wind that sounded almost like distant panpipes. These were the faun's language. And then there was the sensation, that primal, hair-raising feeling of being watched by something ancient and knowing. This was not mere paranoia. It was an acknowledgement of the guardian's gaze. The forest was not empty. It was full of a consciousness that was both playful and profoundly other. To feel that watchful presence was to understand that you were a guest in a kingdom where you were not the ruler, a visitor in a home where the true master preferred to remain just beyond the edge of your vision. A sudden echoing call from just ahead sounds exactly like your companion's voice, urging you to hurry. You follow, only to find yourself alone and disoriented. The path behind you vanished. This is the signature trick of the faun, the master of playful deception. Its mischief was legendary, a catalog of pranks designed to test the wits and humble the pride of any human who entered its woods. Travelers would find their belongings mysteriously moved, their tools hidden by clever hands they never saw. Shepherds, dozing in the afternoon sun, would awaken to find their flocks had been silently scattered, not by a wolf, but by a laughing spirit. And then there were the sounds, the eerie, unsettling noises that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. A whisper from an empty thicket, a sudden, booming laugh from the canopy, the unnerving rustle that felt like footsteps closing in from all sides. This specific, heart-pounding fear, this sensation of being utterly disoriented and hunted by an unseen force, was given a name by the ancients, a word we still use today. They called it panic, named for Pan, the faun's wild Greek cousin. But to label these actions as simple malice is to miss their deeper purpose entirely. The faun was not a demon seeking to destroy. It was a force of necessary chaos, a teacher whose lessons were taught through disorientation and surprise. Its pranks were a direct challenge to human arrogance, to the belief that we are the masters of our environment. By leading the proud traveler in circles, the faun reminded them that the forest has its own logic, one that does not bow to human maps. By hiding a shepherd's crook, it forced a moment of helplessness, a reconnection with the reality that our control is always an illusion. Every trick was a ritual of humility, stripping away the comforts of civilization and confronting the individual with the raw, untamed, and wonderfully unpredictable truth of the wild. The faun's laughter was not cruel, but the sound of nature itself reminding us that we are not its conquerors, but its guests. But the faun's forest was more than a school of hard knocks. It was also a temple of hidden knowledge. Beyond the playful tricks lay a profound and solemn role, that of a prophetic voice. These spirits were not just pranksters, they were seers, and their oracles were whispered through the very fabric of the wild. You would not find them in a grand temple of marble and gold. Their sacred space was the untouched grove, their altar a moss-covered stone. Their prophecies came not in clear sentences, but in a cryptic language of nature. It was the specific way the wind sighed through a cluster of pine needles, a message carried on the breeze. It was the sudden, unexpected call of a bird from a particular direction, a feathered omen. For those brave enough to seek deeper counsel, there was the practice of incubation, sleeping within the faun's sacred precinct, often on the fleece of a sacrificed animal. Here, in the liminal state between waking and dreaming, the faun would speak. These dreams were not comforting fantasies. They were strange, symbolic, and deeply unsettling visions that had to be carefully untangled upon waking. Seeking a faun's guidance was never a simple transaction. It was a perilous endeavor that demanded absolute respect and a very specific state of mind. Arrogance was met with silence or worse, misleading tricks. Only a humble, open heart, one that approached the wild not as a conqueror but as a supplicant, could hope to receive a true whisper of the future. The reward for such reverence, however, was immense, a piece of the forest's own timeless wisdom, a glimpse into the pattern that lies beneath the chaos of the world. A faun's chase often ended not in triumph, but in a splash of cold water and the fading laughter of a nymph. This complex dance of desire is one of the most enduring scenes from mythology, depicted on countless ancient vases and in pastoral poems. We see the faun, driven by raw instinct and playful lust, pursuing a nymph through the woods. Yet she is always just out of reach, vanishing into a stream to become part of the water, or melting into the bark of a tree she protects. His pursuits are almost always comically unsuccessful, a cycle of yearning that never finds its fulfillment. But to dismiss this as a simple story of failed romance is to miss its profound, esoteric heartbeat. On a deeper level, this eternal chase represents the fundamental dynamics of nature itself. The faun embodies the untamed masculine principle, a raw, active, and creative energy that constantly seeks expression. The nymph is the elusive, feminine essence of nature, the spirit of the place itself, which is receptive, fluid, and cannot be possessed. She is the soul of the forest, the spring, and the meadow, a beauty that inspires pursuit but retreats from any attempt at capture. Their union is the great desire of the wild, the moment when creative force meets receptive essence to bring forth new life, new growth, new inspiration. Yet this perfect union is rarely, if ever, consummated, and that is the entire point. It is the tension itself, the perpetual almost, that drives the creative energy of the natural world. The longing is the engine. If the faun ever truly caught the nymph, the dance would be over, the mystery solved, and the vibrant, creative tension that makes the wilderness feel so alive would simply collapse. So the next time you walk through a forest and feel that inexplicable sense of longing, that feeling that a profound secret is hovering just beyond your perception, you are feeling the echo of this ancient dance. It is the faun's desire for the nymph, the eternal chase that keeps the world not just spinning, but singing. The haunting melody of the faun's panpipes is born from a story of unfulfilled desire. The instrument itself is a relic of a chase, crafted from the very essence of the elusive. The myth tells of the nymph Syrinx, who, fleeing the amorous pursuit of the god Pan, was transformed at the water's edge into a bed of hollow reeds. In his frustration, Pan heard the wind sighing through those reeds, creating a lonely, beautiful sound. He cut them, bound them together with wax, and fashioned the first set of panpipes, an instrument forever named Syrinx in memory of the nymph he could never possess. This is not the story of an instrument's invention, but of its soul. The panpipes are, in their very form, a captured echo of the wild's untamable spirit. The music that flows from them is not composed in the way we understand music today. There are no written notes, no rehearsed symphonies. It is pure improvisation, a wild and rhythmic conversation with the moment itself. It mimics the chaotic rustle of leaves, the chattering of a stream, the sudden gust of wind before a storm. This is not music meant for polite applause in a concert hall. It is a sonic key, designed to unlock something primal within the listener. The wild rhythms could stir a deep, ecstatic joy, a feeling of boundless freedom that made listeners want to dance with abandon. But that same rhythm, played with a different intensity, could invoke a deep-seated, irrational fear, the very panic named for the piper himself. It played directly on the nervous system, bypassing reason to touch the raw core of instinct. This power is why rhythm and sound are cornerstones of esoteric practices across the world. From the steady beat of a shaman's drum guiding a journey into a trance state, to the resonant chanting used to raise energy in sacred rites, the principle is the same. Controlled, repetitive sound waves can alter brainwave patterns, quiet the chatter of the conscious mind, and open a doorway to a more intuitive, primal layer of consciousness. The faun, with its panpipes, was a master of this ancient technology. Its music was an invitation, or perhaps a command, to shed the skin of civilization and remember the wild rhythm of your own heartbeat, the untamed song that existed long before words. The Lupercalia was a ritual of sanctioned madness, a day when the city of Rome deliberately invited the wild inside its walls. It began at the Lupercal cave, the legendary site where the she-wolf was said to have suckled the founders Romulus and Remus. Here, priests known as the Luperci would sacrifice goats for fertility and a dog for purification. The air would have been thick with smoke and the metallic scent of blood, a visceral offering to the wild god Faunus. Then the rites took a startling turn. The young Luperci priests stripped naked, an act of shedding civilization itself. They cut thongs called febriua from the skins of the freshly sacrificed goats. Laughing and shouting, they would then run a circuit around the ancient boundaries of the city, striking everyone they met, but especially women who willingly presented themselves with these strips of hide. This was not an act of punishment, but of powerful, contagious magic. The touch of the goat skin thong, charged by the sacrifice and the raw energy of the runners, was believed to transfer the potent life force of the wild directly into the person, ensuring fertility, easy childbirth, and protection. From our modern view, this seems like pure chaos, a bizarre and violent outburst. But from a spiritual perspective, it was a masterpiece of symbolic magic. The ritual was a deliberate act of inversion. For one day, the structured, ordered world of the city was turned upside down. The most primal forces, embodied by the naked priests channeling Faunus, were given free rein. This controlled chaos served a profound purpose: purification through release. By ritually unleashing the wild, the community was driving out the stagnant energies, the spiritual wolves of ill health and infertility, that threatened its well-being. It was a social reset, a way to harness the untamable power of nature not as an enemy, but as a cleansing fire. The laughter of the running Lupercalia was the same laughter of the faun in the forest, a sound that dissolved arrogance and reminded everyone that life, in its most vital form, is a wild, unpredictable, and powerfully fertile force. This was the essence of Faunus's magic, the understanding that sometimes, to make a system whole, you must first allow a sacred and purposeful chaos to run through its streets. The sacred chaos of the Lupercalia found its echo in the quieter, more refined world of Roman poetry, where the wild faun was invited into the human heart. Virgil, in his eclogues, paints a scene of profound, almost human grief. When the idealized shepherd Daphnis dies, the poet writes that the fauns and nymphs alike weep for his passing. Here, the fauns are not tricksters, but mourners, their wildness channeled into a shared sorrow that elevates them to something noble and sympathetic. They feel loss, they recognize beauty, and in doing so, they become relatable. This was a deliberate literary softening, a step away from the terrifying forest guardian and toward a pastoral companion. Yet their essential mystery remains. They weep not in a city, but in the wild, and their grief is as much a part of nature's cycle as the seasons themselves. Ovid, in his Metamorphoses, takes this transformation even further. His work is a tapestry of change, where gods, nymphs, and mortals are constantly shifting form, and the fauns are frequent players in this fluid world. They are witnesses and participants in a universe where nature's power is expressed through perpetual transformation. A faun might stumble upon a nymph mid-change, its desire forever linked to the moment she becomes a tree or a spring. In Ovid's hands, their mischief is less about panic and more about the catalyst for these magical transitions. They are the embodiment of a world where nothing is fixed, where the boundary between human, spirit, and plant is endlessly permeable. This literary reframing did not strip the faun of its power. It simply translated that power into a new language. The poets took the raw, untamed energy of the forest god and wove it into the emotional and metaphysical landscape of human experience. They made the wild relatable, showing that the faun's spirit was not just an external force to be feared, but an internal one to be understood, a part of nature that also feels, desires, and mourns. Through their verses, the faun became less a monster at the edge of the map, and more a reflection of the mysterious, transformative wilderness within our own souls. This rustic laughter echoing from the grove found a surprising home in the minds of Rome's greatest thinkers. For the philosophers, the faun was far more than a folk tale. It was a living symbol of nature's own intelligence. They saw in its wild form an embodiment of the anima mundi, the world soul, that divine and conscious breath they believed infused all of creation. This was not a god in a temple, but divinity present in every leaf, stone, and stream, a spirit both immanent and alive. The faun, as a guardian of that wild space, became a perfect expression of this idea, a localized consciousness of the global mind. Its playful chaos was not random, but the visible expression of nature's own creative and unpredictable processes. This philosophical lens transformed the faun from a mere character into a concept. It represented a life lived in perfect accordance with natural law, a state the Stoics called living according to nature. For them, the highest virtue was to understand and align oneself with the rational yet wild order of the cosmos. The faun, untamed by human society and following its own primal instincts, was an unwitting master of this practice. It did not need philosophy books, because its entire existence was a lesson in authenticity. It acted without the corruption of social pretense, its desires and actions flowing directly from its true nature. Think of a stream that simply follows the path of the land, or a tree that grows toward the light without a second thought. The faun is that principle, personified. It's simple, direct existence becomes a mirror for our own often complicated lives. How much of our own stress and confusion comes from fighting against our own natural rhythms, from ignoring the quiet wisdom of our instincts in favor of complex social games? The Faun's philosophical challenge is an invitation to strip that away, to listen for the older, quieter song of our own essential nature, the unwritten law that hums just beneath the noise of civilization. Yet this rustic laughter could not survive the coming of a new, singular God. As Christianity spread its shadow across the Roman Empire, the old spirits of the grove faced a profound and deliberate transformation. The complex nature god Faunus and his playful children were systematically recast, their sacred wildness twisted into a new and terrifying shape. The very features that once symbolized a connection to the fertile earth now became marks of pure evil. Those powerful horns, once a crown of virile life force, were now the headpiece of the Christian devil. Those cloven hooves, an anchor to the living soil, became the stomping feet of a demon. The Faun's untamed, ecstatic nature, once a sacred channel for prophetic vision and fertile power, was redefined as sinful temptation, a lure away from the path of spiritual salvation. This was the great unmasking in reverse, where we have been seeking the truth behind a misunderstood spirit. The early church was actively constructing a lie to dismantle the old religions. They took a multifaceted symbol of nature's divine chaos and flattened it into a monolithic symbol of opposition to their god. The forest, once a cathedral of Faunus, was now a haunted wilderness, its ancient guardian reduced to a mere minion of hell. This demonization was not an accident of theology. It was a calculated strategy. By painting the old gods as demons, the new faith could more easily persuade people to abandon their ancestral practices. Why would you leave offerings to a spirit of the spring if you believed it was a deceptive fiend seeking your soul's damnation? The sacred groves were cut down not just as lumber, but as a spiritual purge, an attempt to silence the whispering voice of the wild forever. The faun was not destroyed, but imprisoned within a new story, its horns and hooves forever shackled to a narrative of fear and sin. The horns and hooves of the old gods were too deeply carved into the human imagination to be erased by a new faith. When the church condemned them, these ancient spirits did not vanish. They simply went underground, slipping into the hidden corners of folklore and emerging with new names. The essence of the faun found a brilliant, resilient disguise in the capricious fairies and wild men of medieval European legend. Across the continent, from the deep woods of England to the alpine forests of Germany, the archetype lived on. In England, the faun's spirit burned brightly in the figure of Puck, also known as Robin Goodfellow. He was a creature of the hearth and the hedge, a shape-shifting trickster whose laughter echoed from the village green to the deepest thicket. Just like the faun, he led travelers astray with false lights and misleading paths, played pranks on lazy servants, and could be a helpful, if unpredictable, domestic spirit if shown the proper respect. His domain was the liminal space between the town and the wild, the exact same borderland the faun once guarded. Further north, in the rugged Scottish Highlands, the Gilly Deitchi was a solitary, shaggy-haired guardian of the birch forests, a being kind to lost children but fiercely protective of his territory, mirroring the faun's dual role as both playful trickster and solemn warden. And throughout Europe, tales spread of the woodwose, or the wild man, a hairy, primitive being who lived in complete harmony with the untamed world, wielding a crude club and representing the raw, indomitable power of nature that civilization could never fully conquer. Each of these figures is a clear, direct descendant of the Roman faun. They all share its core traits: a woodland home, a love of clever trickery that tests human character, and a fundamental, unbreakable connection to the wild. This transformation from pagan god to folkloric fairy was not a demotion. It was a survival strategy. The old spirit shed its divine skin to live on in the one place it could never be erased, the stories whispered by the fireside, passed down through generations who still felt a shiver of recognition when a twig snapped in the dark of the woods. That shiver of ancient fear, however, began to soften into a different kind of thrill. As the smokestacks of the Industrial Revolution rose, blotting out the sky with soot and order. A powerful counter-movement was born in the hearts of poets and painters. The Romantics, sickened by the grime and rigid logic of the factory, turned their gaze backward with a desperate longing. They sought to re-enchant a world that science and industry had stripped of its magic, and in their search, they rediscovered the faun. No longer a demonic figure, it became a potent symbol of everything the modern world had lost, a beacon of primal freedom and unspoiled innocence. This was not a return to superstition, but a spiritual rebellion. William Blake wrote of building Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land, a cry against the dark satanic mills. For the Romantics, the faun was the spirit of that green land, a living reminder of a time when the woods were not just timber to be harvested, but a cathedral of wonder. Its playful chaos was reframed as a virtuous rejection of stifling social conventions. The faun represented a life lived by feeling and instinct, not by the clock and the ledger. This artistic rebirth was crucial, for it washed the demonic stain from the faun's horns and hooves, preparing the ground for its next, even more profound transformation. The Romantics did not just make the faun charming again, they made it psychologically relevant, a symbol of the wild, authentic self that every person carries within, a self that civilization too often tries to silence. That same wild spirit, chased by poets and philosophers, found its ultimate expression not in words, but in sound. Claude Debussy's Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun begins with a single, sinuous melody from a flute, a line so languid and warm it feels like sunlight filtering through leaves onto bare skin. This is not the rustic folk tune of a simple piper. This is the faun's own dream given musical form. Debussy's revolutionary composition, a tone poem from the late 19th century, stands as one of the most profound acts of unmasking in the faun's long history. He discarded the entire rulebook of classical music to achieve this. Where older compositions built on clear harmonies and a logical progression toward a climax, Debussy's world is one of shimmering ambiguity. The harmonies drift, never quite resolving, creating a sensation of perpetual longing. The rhythm is fluid and elusive, like the dappled light on a forest floor, impossible to pin down. There is no story being told here, no heroic narrative. Instead, the music immerses you directly into the faun's own subconscious, into a hazy afternoon of sensual memory and half-formed desire. You can almost feel the warm grass, hear the faint buzz of insects, and slip into the same timeless reverie as the mythical being itself. This was a seismic shift in art. Debussy was using the orchestra not to narrate, but to evoke. He was painting with sound, and his subject was the very essence of the faun, its elusive, sensual, and deeply interior nature. This directly mirrors the rising exploration of the human subconscious that would soon explode into psychology. Just as Freud was beginning to map the hidden landscapes of dreams and desires, Debussy was giving them a soundtrack. The faun was no longer just an external spirit of the woods. It became a symbol for the untamed, instinctual wilderness within our own minds. Its playful mischief was recast as the unpredictable flow of our own hidden thoughts and yearnings. So when you listen to that opening flute solo, you are not just hearing a melody, you are hearing the reawakening of an ancient archetype. Debussy's masterpiece stripped away the last vestiges of the demonic and the merely quaint, revealing the faun in its full modern complexity, a timeless representation of the beautiful, mysterious, and utterly untamable realm of our own inner world. Debussy's dreamy soundscape was about to be shattered into 1,000 angular pieces. Just 2 decades after his musical revolution, the Ballet Russes unveiled a performance so radical it caused a scandal that shook Parisian society to its core. The year was 1912, and the work was Vaslav Nijinsky's ballet, Elle après midi d'un faun. Nijinsky, the company's star dancer and a choreographic visionary, took Debussy's score and forged from it a new, shocking physical language for the faun. He discarded every convention of classical ballet. There were no graceful pirouettes, no soaring leaps, no fluid arm movements. Instead, his faun moved in a series of sharp, deliberate, and strangely two-dimensional poses. The dancer's body became a living frieze, all profile and flat planes. as if he had stepped directly off the side of an ancient Greek vase. This was not the charming, romantic creature of the Renaissance, nor the poetic dreamer of Debussy's tone poem. This faun was an archaeological rediscovery, a primal being whose every movement was dictated by a single, overwhelming instinct. The entire ballet was a short, tense vignette. The faun spies a group of nymphs by a stream. One of them, the chief nymph, enters his space and dances with a delicate, fleeting grace. But the encounter is not a pursuit. It is a silent, intense observation. The faun does not chase, he stalks. His desire is not a playful yearning, but a palpable, physical tension that radiates from his rigid limbs and focused gaze. Then comes the infamous final scene, the moment that turned the ballet into a front-page controversy. The chief nymph departs, accidentally leaving her long, translucent scarf behind. The faun discovers it. He picks it up, his movements slow and ritualistic. He carries it back to his rock, and in the ballet's stunning climax, he lowers himself upon the scarf in a single, unmistakable motion of sensual fulfillment. The audience gasped. Critics were apoplectic, accusing Nijinsky of obscenity, of presenting not art but a crude public act. Yet this was the entire point of the unmasking. Nijinsky was not trying to be vulgar, he was trying to be honest. He stripped away 1,500 years of artistic filter, all the poetry and romanticism, to show the faun's desire exactly for what it is, a raw, uncomplicated, and primal force of nature. That final gesture was not lewd, it was a profound statement. The faun does not possess the nymph, he possesses the sensation, the scent, the memory of her presence. His fulfillment is in the symbol, a pure expression of instinct untempered by human morality or shame. Nijinsky's faun forced a modern audience to stare directly into the eyes of the wild, and what they saw reflected back was a part of themselves they had been taught to bury. It was a cultural exorcism, casting out the demonized and sanitized versions to reveal the unsettling, beautiful, and utterly truthful core of the ancient spirit. That final, shocking gesture in Nijinsky's ballet stripped the faun bare, leaving only its raw, primal core. Yet from that same well of ancient archetypes, a very different faun would soon emerge, one who carried an umbrella and parcels in a snow-covered wood. In C.S. Lewis's Narnia, we meet Mr. Tumnus, and his introduction marks a profound redemption of the entire myth. Lewis, a scholar deeply versed in mythology, took the classic figure of the faun, with its horns, hooves, and iconic panpipes, and performed a kind of spiritual alchemy. He transformed the mischievous, potentially dangerous spirit of the forest into a kind, gentle, and deeply civilized being. Mr. Tumnus is not a creature of chaotic panic, but of cozy conversation. His home is a snug cave with a crackling fire, a bookshelf full of learned volumes, and the comforting ritual of tea and toast. This is the faun fully domesticated, his wildness channeled into a love for stories and music. The profound shift happens in his very first encounter with Lucy. The old faun of myth would have led her astray or played a frightening trick. Tumnus, too, intends a misdeed, having promised the White Witch to hand over any human child he finds. But his nature rebels against this predatory role. He cannot complete his task because his essential character, shaped by Lewis, is one of empathy and conscience. He weeps for his own intended treachery, a far cry from the laughing trickster of the ancient woods. This is the core of Lewis's reimagining. Tumnus is not a sanitized version of the faun, he is a redeemed one. His story arc is one of moral courage, where he chooses to protect Lucy at great personal cost, suffering imprisonment and petrification by the witch. In this, Lewis uses the faun to symbolize the re-enchantment of a world frozen by an unnatural, rigid order. The White Witch's Narnia, where it is always winter and never Christmas, is a world of sterile control, a perversion of nature's true cycle. Mr. Tumnus, with his warm fire and living music, represents a spark of the true, wild, and good Narnia struggling to break through the ice. His faun nature is not the problem, it is the solution. His inherent connection to the natural world, even in its gentlest form, makes him an enemy of the witch's artificial tyranny. Through Tumnus, Lewis suggests that the wild spirit of the faun was never truly about malevolence, but about a deeper, organic order that celebrates life, growth, and kindness, a force that can thaw even the most frozen of hearts. Mr. Tumnus's cozy fire represents more than just a charming detail. It is a powerful symbol of the wild spirit finding a home within us. This brings us to the most personal layer of unmasking, the faun as a psychological archetype living deep in the unconscious of every person. The pioneering psychologist Carl Jung proposed that humanity shares a collective unconscious, a vast reservoir of universal patterns and figures called archetypes. These are not personal memories, but inherited psychic structures that shape our deepest instincts and behaviors. The faun is a perfect embodiment of one such archetype, often called the trickster or the wild man. It represents the raw, untamed, and fundamentally creative part of our own psyche. This is the pan within, the inner faun. Its energy is the source of our spontaneous laughter, our sudden creative bursts, the gut feelings we often ignore, and the deep, primal longing for freedom that chafes against the constraints of routine and responsibility. This inner wildness is not an enemy to be conquered, but a vital part of our whole self that has often been repressed, demonized by our own internal critic, just as the church demonized the ancient God. When we lock this part of ourselves away, we pay a steep price. Our creativity can feel blocked, our lives can become sterile and predictable, and a sense of ennui, a quiet desperation, can set in. We might feel like we are just going through the motions, living a life that looks correct on the outside but feels hollow within. This is the psychological equivalent of Narnia's eternal winter, a frozen state imposed by an over-reliance on rigid order and societal expectation. The modern esoteric practice, then, is the deliberate act of unmasking and integrating this inner faun. It is not about quitting your job and running naked through the woods, but about consciously inviting that wild energy back into your daily life. How can you do this? It starts with listening to those quiet, instinctual nudges you usually dismiss. It means carving out time for pure, purposeless play, for improvisational music or dance that follows no set pattern. It involves seeking out liminal spaces in your own world, whether it is a quiet park at dawn or simply turning off all screens to let your mind wander without a destination. This is sacred work, a ritual of self-reclamation. By honoring the faun within, you are not unleashing chaos, you are restoring a vital balance. You are allowing the fertile, chaotic, and profoundly creative forces of your own nature to thaw the frozen parts of your spirit, bringing back the vibrant, unpredictable, and truly authentic song of your own life. This ancient spirit is not confined to the past. Its hooves are firmly planted in the soil of the present. Within the vibrant tapestry of modern pagan and Wiccan traditions, the faun and its divine father Faunus are living deities, actively honored for the unique wild magic they embody. For contemporary practitioners, these are not distant myths but immediate, accessible forces of nature. An altar to Faunus might not be in a grand temple, but on a simple wooden stump in a backyard garden or deep in a local forest. It would be adorned with natural offerings, pine cones and acorns, a bowl of fresh water or red wine, and perhaps a simple flute to represent his iconic panpipes. This is not an act of mere historical reenactment. It is a deliberate act of relationship building with the spirit of the wild. Practitioners invoke Faunus and the fauns to forge a stronger ecological connection, to feel the living pulse of the land not as an abstract concept, but as a divine presence. In a world of concrete and digital screens, this connection becomes a radical act of spiritual grounding, a way to remember that we are part of a vast, breathing, conscious ecosystem. He is called upon as a guardian of natural spaces, a protective energy to watch over a threatened woodland or a personal sacred grove. Those who work magic for environmental causes often see him as a powerful ally, a divine force to strengthen spells aimed at healing the earth and protecting wild creatures. Beyond his role as guardian, the faun is a potent source for unlocking creativity. That same untamed energy that once inspired panic is now invoked to shatter creative blocks and artistic stagnation. A writer struggling with a stale narrative or a painter facing a blank canvas might call upon the faun's spirit to break through the rigid walls of the conscious mind, to tap into a more instinctual, free-flowing well of inspiration. His music is the rhythm of improvisation and raw expression. In this context, the faun also represents a specific aspect of sacred masculinity, one that is often overlooked. This is not the aggressive, domineering masculine energy, but a primal, fertile, and joyful one. It is the energy of the protective father, the playful companion, and the creative instigator, deeply connected to the earth rather than seeking to conquer it. Modern rituals might involve drumming to wild, ecstatic rhythms, dancing with uninhibited joy under the moon, or simply sitting in silence within a grove to listen for his prophetic whispers on the wind. The practice of seeking his guidance through dreams, much like the ancient rite of incubation, is still very much alive. The goal is to receive his cryptic, symbolic visions, not for personal gain, but for a deeper understanding of one's place within the natural world's great, unfolding pattern. To work with the faun today is to acknowledge that the wild god was never dethroned. He was only waiting for us to remember his name. Those horns and hooves are far more than a mythical costume. They form a profound esoteric map, charting the journey of spiritual energy from the raw earth to the highest realms of consciousness. The horns are not merely a symbol of animal power, they are antennae for the divine. In traditions like Tantra and Kundalini Yoga, a powerful, coiled energy is said to rest at the base of the spine. This is our primal life force, our raw creative potential. When awakened through spiritual practice, this energy rises up the spine, activating psychic centers and culminating at the crown of the head, opening the individual to states of cosmic awareness and higher knowledge. The faun's horns, sprouting directly from its head, are a perfect physical symbol of this process. They represent the successful culmination of that inner ascent, the visible eruption of awakened spiritual power into the realm of consciousness. They are the antennae that receive the subtle whispers of the universe, the natural crown of a being that lives in direct contact with the divine current flowing through all things. Yet this connection to the heavens is perfectly balanced by its anchor to the earth. The faun's cloven hooves are the necessary counterweight to its reaching horns. They are a constant physical reminder that spiritual awakening cannot be a flight from the world. To be truly whole, we must be as grounded as we are inspired. The hooves keep the faun connected to the soil, to the cycles of decay and growth, to the simple, undeniable truth of the physical body. This is the principle of being fully incarnate, of honoring the temple of the flesh while seeking the experiences of the spirit. A spirituality that denies the body, that sees the physical as impure, creates a dangerous schism within the self. The faun, with its hooves firmly on the ground, teaches us that enlightenment is not an escape from the world, but a deeper, more authentic participation in it. It finds the sacred not only in visions, but in the feel of cool moss underfoot and the taste of wild berries. This brings us to the ultimate symbolism of its hybrid form. The faun is not a monster, but a masterpiece of integration. Its very body is a living testament to the reconciliation of opposites that lies at the heart of so many mystical traditions. The human torso represents our rational mind, our capacity for logic, language, and self-awareness. The goat's legs embody the instinctual self, the realm of raw desire, intuition, and primal life force. In most of us, these two parts are at war. Our civilized mind tries to suppress our wild instincts, and our repressed instincts sabotage our conscious goals. The faun shows us a different way. It is a being in which the rational and the instinctual do not merely coexist, they cooperate. Its human mind gives direction to its animal energy, and its animal body gives power and authenticity to its human thoughts. This is the alchemical marriage, the sacred union of spirit and matter within a single being. To look upon a faun is to see a vision of our own potential wholeness, a self that is both deeply grounded and mystically aware, perfectly at home in both the forest and the dream. This distinction between the Roman faun and the Greek satyr is not just academic. It is a vital key for anyone walking an esoteric path. While both are spirits of the wild, their energies operate on fundamentally different frequencies. The Greek satyr is a being of raw, unrefined libido, a force of pure, often destructive desire. Its world is the riotous frenzy of Dionysus, a chaos that seeks to break down all order through ecstatic, and sometimes violent, release. The satyr embodies a primal, untamed instinct that consumes without a thought for consequence or balance. It is the untamed fire that burns the forest to make way for new growth, but without any concern for what is lost in the flames. The Roman faun, however, represents a wildness that has been integrated into a larger system. Its chaos is not an end in itself, but a functional, necessary part of the natural order. Think of a sudden summer storm that seems chaotic, yet ultimately waters the fields and clears the air. The faun's mischief is that storm, a disruptive but ultimately beneficent force that tests and purifies. It is chaos with a purpose. This is why the faun holds the gift of prophecy, a connection to the deeper patterns that underlie the apparent randomness of nature. It can listen to the secret language of the world because it is not lost in its own desires. The satyr is consumed by the frenzy, while the faun observes the pattern within it. For magical and symbolic work, confusing these two can lead you wildly astray. Invoking the energy of the satyr might shatter a creative block, but it could just as easily lead to a destructive, overwhelming burst of passion that damages relationships and projects. It is a power that is notoriously difficult to channel. Calling upon the spirit of the faun, however, invites a guided wildness. It is the energy that helps you break free from stifling routine, not through reckless abandon, but through a rediscovery of your own authentic, instinctual rhythm. It is the force that clears away mental clutter so you can hear your own inner voice, your own intuitive prophecies. One is the untamed spark, the other is the sacred fire contained within a hearth. Understanding this crucial esoteric distinction allows you to work with the precise current of wild energy you truly need. But how do you actually begin a conversation with this wild spirit? The first step is to find a place where the pavement ends and the old world begins. Your ritual space should be a living altar, not a static shelf indoors. Seek out a quiet corner of a park, the edge of a wooded area, or even a secluded spot in your own garden. Find a stable surface, a mossy stump, a flat stone, or simply a clean patch of earth. This is your foundation. Adorn it with the treasures of the immediate landscape, a pine cone for its ancient structure, a feather for the messages carried on the wind, a smooth river stone for the enduring heart of the earth. These are not decorations, they are resonant objects that hum with the same frequency as the faun itself, creating a bridge into its world. When you bring an offering, think like a gracious guest arriving at the home of an unpredictable host. A small libation of red wine poured onto the soil echoes the ancient sacrifices to Faunus, a sharing of life's vibrant essence. A dollop of raw honey on a leaf is an offering of pure, wild sweetness, a gift of concentrated sunlight and floral memory that any nature spirit would appreciate. Fresh, seasonal berries or wild fruits are a direct acknowledgement of the forest's own bounty, a way of saying you honor the cycle of growth and decay that he presides over. The key is in the presentation and your intention. Do not toss the offering down, place it with mindful respect. State your purpose aloud in a clear, quiet voice. You are not issuing a command or casting a summoning spell, you are issuing an invitation. You might say, I have come to listen, or I offer this gift in the spirit of friendship and learning. This shifts the entire dynamic from one of control to one of relationship. The core of the practice is then to become still and listen. This is the most challenging and most rewarding part. Sit comfortably before your simple altar and close your eyes. Do not try to force a vision of a goat-legged being. Instead, open your ears to the symphony already playing. Tune your attention to the rustle of leaves, not as a random sound, but as a language. Listen to the pattern of bird calls, the distant hum of insects, the way the wind rises and falls. The faun's voice is woven into this tapestry. It speaks through the sudden, unexpected sound, the snap of a twig to your left when nothing is there, the faint, melodic sigh that seems to drift between the trees. Your mind will rebel at first, labeling it all as imagination. But that is the very wall you must let crumble. In this meditative state, ask a simple, open-ended question and then wait, not for an answer in words, but for a shift in the soundscape around you, for a feeling of playful presence, for intuitive knowing that arrives like a whisper. The goal is to quiet your own internal noise so you can perceive the ancient, mischievous intelligence that has been watching you all along. This is not about gaining power, but about remembering a connection, about learning to walk through your own life with the faun's authentic, untamed heart. This final unmasking reveals the faun's ultimate gift, a paradoxical lesson for our meticulously ordered lives. We spend our days constructing walls of control, filling calendars with appointments and to-do lists, seeking a predictable safety that often leaves us feeling drained and disconnected. The faun, in all its chaotic glory, stands as a living challenge to this entire paradigm. It teaches that true vitality is not found in rigid control, but in the courageous embrace of beneficial chaos. This is not the destructive chaos of collapse, but the creative chaos of the forest floor, where decay nourishes new growth and unexpected events become the seeds of transformation. Think of a sudden downpour that ruins your picnic, but in doing so, provides the water that saves a nearby grove of trees from drought. The faun is that storm, disrupting our small plans to serve a larger, more vital pattern. Its spontaneous joy is not a distraction from our purpose, but a rediscovery of it. When was the last time you abandoned your schedule to simply follow a curious sound, or danced for no reason other than the sun felt warm on your skin? These are not frivolous acts, they are rituals of reclamation, moments where we allow the inner faun to lead. By reconnecting with this instinctual nature, we are not regressing, we are becoming more whole. We learn to trust the gut feeling that warns us of a wrong path, or the sudden burst of inspiration that solves a problem logic could not touch. The faun's whispers are the language of this deeper intelligence, an ancient dialect spoken not in words, but in feelings, sensations, and intuitive knowings. To walk with this spirit is to learn that the wild does not need to be conquered, it needs to be listened to. It is to understand that the most profound order is not the brittle order of a spreadsheet, but the fluid, resilient, and endlessly creative order of an ecosystem. The faun's final lesson is an invitation to stop building walls against the wild, and to start opening doors for it, allowing its chaotic, joyful, and utterly essential music to flow back into the rhythm of our days. Our journey through the deep woods is complete. We began with a feared forest spirit, a voice in the leaves that could incite panic in the bravest traveler. We saw that primal energy demonized by a new faith, its horns and hooves twisted into a caricature of evil, its sacred wildness condemned as sin. Yet the spirit refused to die, slipping into folklore as Puck and the Woodwose, waiting in the shadows of our stories. The romantics and then artists like Debussy and Nijinsky began its great redemption, washing away the stains of fear and sanctimony to reveal its raw, psychological truth. Finally, we saw it welcomed home, both in modern spiritual practice and in the cozy cave of Mr. Tumnus, not as a monster to be slain, but as a vital part of our own inner landscape. This unmasking reveals a profound truth, that to understand the faun is to understand a long-forgotten part of our own soul. It is the part that chafes against endless routine, that yearns for spontaneous laughter and the freedom to follow an instinct without a second thought. It is our own inner wildness, the untamed core that remembers a deeper connection to the living, breathing world. This spirit does not ask you to abandon your life, but to bring its essence into your daily rhythm, to listen for its music in the rustle of city trees, and to allow its playful chaos to clear away the dust of predictability. The path doesn't end here. We would love to hear your own encounters with this idea. Have you ever felt that playful presence in the woods, or perhaps sensed your own inner faun urging you toward a more authentic life? Share your stories and thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into esoteric mythology, subscribe for more journeys into the hidden stories that shape our world. And the next time you have a moment, find a patch of green, whether a vast forest or a quiet park. Walk slowly, breathe deeply, and listen. You might just hear the faint, timeless melody of panpipes on the wind, calling you home to your own wild, joyful